I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but sometimes when you play music, you realize that, or piano or any instrument for that matter, you realize that even if you play exactly the same note or exactly the same rhythm and exactly the same chords as whoever your favorite instrumentalist musician is, even if you play exactly the same notes, rhythm, chords, it still doesn't sound the same. It still doesn't sound like that person. And I think you know that, right? And the trick here is because playing the notes and the notes, the rhythm, and the chords are not all there is to music, right? You know that the music is a lot more than notes, rhythm, and chord, note, rhythm, and chord. And there are a lot of little nuances, little tips and tricks, little expression that musicians do to make their playing sound the way that they do. And so in this video, and maybe in some videos in the future, if this is a helpful series to you guys, in these kind of videos, I'm going to show you those little things, those little tips and expression and dynamics and little things that people do to make their playing sound more unique and sound more like them and sound more expressive, sounds better. And so those are the things that I learned, and I kind of digest them and kind of took them as my own, and I'll share them with you. The first thing that I want to share with you has to do with melody. How do you make the melody? How do you make playing melody more expressive on the piano? And this is kind of important for us as piano players. I'm going to put this back on, because piano on its own, it's a very I wouldn't say it's not a melodic instrument, but it has this handicap because piano is first and foremost a rhythmic instrument. Right? Even the mechanism of making a note, it's a percussive instrument. As in, we play a note and then, technically on the real one, you have the hammer hitting the string. It's a percussive instrument. So when we try to play melodies, we don't get all those expressive qualities that, violin players do. They can do vibrato. You can't do vibrato. They can do slides. Trumpet players, they can do slide. We can't slide up or slide the note. We can't crescendo to the note. We can't make them loud. That's not possible. So there's a lot of limitations on the piano trying to make the melody more expressive. So how do we go about that? One of the things that I learned from listening to saxophone players, trumpet players, and even violin players is the slide. It's the gliding. What they can do is they can glide up to the notes. But how do we do that? And I've heard some keyboard players, they sort of copy that, and they come up with something that sounds like this. Did you hear that? Right? If you compare that to technically the same notes, right? Versus oops. Did you hear that? I heard a lot of keyboard players, I didn't come up with this. I heard a lot of keyboard players do this kind of stuff. And what I'm hearing is that they're trying to emulate those trumpet players, saxophone players, violin players, or even singers, they glide up to the note. And I thought, hey, this is really good. When we do that, our melody becomes more expressive because there's more movement. You can play around with the notes a bit. Let's break down how this is done. It's actually quite simple. The one that I did, there's a couple ways to play this. Right? The first one that I did is the really long glide, which is maybe the hardest one. You can sort of treat it as like 3 grace notes. And what I'm doing is I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4 fingering. Right? Oops. The tricky thing is obviously do them fast and sort of, you don't even have to do them clearly. Technically, if you do them like, the less clear you are with it is probably the better, right? right? Do it faster. That's one way to do it. Make a 4-note, or you can even, if you really want to go about it, you could do a 5-note slide, but I think that's a little too much. I think 3-note slide is probably good enough. But you think, okay, that's probably a little too much for some of them. What you can do is you can do a 1/2-note slide. Or you can barely hear that, but once you add these little tips and tricks, nuances, it really changes the playing. Right, those little grace notes. You can do a 1/2 step, or you can do a whole step. Oops. I think the 1/2 step, whole step kind of depends on whether you're in the key or not. The 1/2 step, obviously, most of the time it doesn't matter what key you're in. But if you're doing a whole step, it kind of depends if the whole step is in the key. Like for example, like that one, that note is technically on the key. That sounds kind of awkward. So, I mean, it's so short that it probably doesn't matter. You can do a 2-note glide. So that's kind of halfway between the 3-note glide and the 2-note glide, and there's a 1-note glide. There's also the glide down, which is a little bit less common, but it's kind of cool as well. So, oops. Right, you can do kind of like a trumpet thing. Now all of a sudden the piano, it's more melodic, it's more expressive. Obviously we're trying to copy them, we can't glide the note, but I think that sounds a lot better than, or sounds a lot cooler, sounds a lot more special, more unique than just playing, stuff like that. So the practice here, I think, for me when I did this, is you can play a scale and you can just, add 1/2 step glide, whole step glide, 2-step glide, 3-step glide, and so on and so forth. So you could go, like the fingering here doesn't matter anymore. So you're just trying to get used to adding a little grace note before that. You can do a 2. Right, you can do the 3. The 3 doesn't really matter as long as you do them fast, as in what kind of note you use. And then coming down, the key is trying to make them as short and as connected as possible. Oops. Right? You could practice scale like that, or maybe just take your piece and just start adding them in. Right, obviously, you don't want to do on everything. It's gonna sound kind of funny. Right, that sounds kind of. So you have to pick your spots, right? The expressive spots, the big leaps. Usually, those are good ways. If you don't have big leaps, you can just do the small ones and do it in the direction of the melody. Just pick your spots. You would know where to add them without sounding too funny. So hopefully this is a cool little tip to help you sound more individual. So it's just your individual playing to come out a little bit more. You can steal this and you can put it into your own playing to make your playing more expressive. If you enjoy tips like these, if you kind of like these kind of small little videos, let me know in the comment section down below. Do you have other tips that you use often? Share with us. Share it with me in the comment section down below. I'd love to read it. I've also typed out this piano arrangement of Misty, which is the song that I used for a demonstration. I'm gonna put it up onto my Patreon page for my patrons, and if you'd like to support me, you can consider supporting me over there on my Patreon page. I think that's it. If this is helpful to you, make sure to share it with your piano friends, and I'll see you in the next video.